Good evening, everyone. I'm Tiffany Feingold. I apologize. I know my screen says Kyle Feingold with a C. That's my husband. I'm co-founder of Guiding Bright Minds. We have Brandon Slade with us tonight from Untapped Learning. And I just want to thank you all for joining us this evening. As I mentioned earlier, as y'all were logging in, I know time is precious. And so I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening, because what we know as parents, it is a difficult job. And we know that being a parent of a neurodiverse child makes it even more difficult. So finding the time to do this is important. So I'm excited to really kick off the series. It's a 3-part series, and this is the first webinar of that series. And the series is all about you as parents. How did we re-energize? How do we get our momentum going, get back to kind of the basics, if you will, of self-care? And what are we doing to really look and reflect on being the best that we can be mentally, emotionally, physically for our children? And I know that's not easy. And I know it's probably the last thing on people's minds, but I love the analogy that somebody said to me. It's when you're on the airplane and you hear them say, in the event of a crash, you put your oxygen mask on first, and then you attend to your child. And that's where I want to look at this series, is just given that oxygen, given that breath that we can take and that we need to take as parents to be able to get back to where we can be the best parent that our children, our spouses, and everyone needs us to be. So thank you again for joining us. Before I introduce Brandon, I do want to talk just a little bit about Guiding Bright Minds and a little bit about my background. I'm a parent of a child with neurodiversity, so I know firsthand, and it was through my experience and my journey that my husband and I, Kyle, founded Guided Bright Minds, and we just launched it a year ago. But I know how overwhelming it is to find the resources, the tools, the strategies, and especially to find providers like Brandon, like Untapped Learning, that are truly dedicated to helping our kids, that are here for a purpose and a mission. And so it's my personal mission is to help parents on that journey as well. We personally interview every one of our professionals that are a part of the Guiding Bright Minds network. Why are they doing what they're doing? Why do they want to help children with neurodiversities? And so we want to bring them to you so you can find the right provider the first time. We want to be that one place that you come to for your resources. What is neurodiversity? What is autism? What is ADHD? How do I get an evaluation? What's the difference between an educational evaluation and a psychological evaluation? So really be that resource. And we want to hear from you. What do you want? What do you need? How can we help you on our journey? So I'm going to put in the chat later on our website. Join us for free. Get our newsletters, be part of our community, because I know firsthand surrounding myself with other parents that have children of neurodiversities has helped me on my journey. And we're here to support each other. And we're here to connect you with the professionals. We're here to provide you the resources. We host these free events and just keep you connected and celebrate our amazing children and celebrate you as well. So thank you for your time. Please check out guidingbrightminds.com. Look at us, feel us, and help us actually create more of an adventure for you on that journey, what that looks like. I do want to mention that we have what's called, we just recently launched Birthday Buddies. And Birthday Buddies is there because we know sometimes our kids don't have friends show up for their birthdays. So I said, enough of that. Let's create a community again so we can get together and join. So look at all our things, and hopefully we can be there as a resource and a tool for you. So thank you again. Our first series, starting off with self-care ultimately, but turning chaos into collaboration. And Brandon's an expert in executive functioning. So we want to help you with those tools and resources and what that looks like. So let me tell you a little bit about Brandon, who was born and raised in Boulder, Colorado. He struggled with academics throughout high school, but it wasn't until he attended college as a student athlete that learning became significantly more difficult. He recognized that his brain worked differently. than those of his peers, and he did not know how to successfully balance sports, school, and social aspects of his collegiate life. So after struggling academically, getting diagnosed with ADHD, and re-enrolling in college, he finally figured out ways to implement habits, routines, and learning strategies that enable him to succeed as a student. And like most of us, we follow our passion. And I love what Brandon's done because he can relate to your kids. He created an organization because of his personal journey. So after he graduated with his degree in early education, childhood education and special education, he received his master's from Arizona State University in special education and earned an education specialist degree in school psychology from the University of Colorado. So since recovering from his academic setbacks his freshman year, his focus has remained the same: understand how the ADHD brain works. And after teaching special education for 12 years, he founded Untapped Learning. So I'm so excited to have him. His passion will shine through. And I will turn it over to you, Brandon.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Yeah, that was so kind. Thank you so much. And just to repeat what you said, Guiding Bright Minds, they have some unbelievable resources that I couldn't recommend more for a lot of our families. So please check that out. But yeah, you know, I'm honored and grateful to be here, and that you guys are taking the time and looking at self-care, but from almost like a productivity side. So, you know, we'll have professionals talk about self-care from the mental health side and other components of it. But I kind of want to talk about it from the productivity side, because this is an unbelievably demanding time of the year. The goal is to give very concrete recommendations. I always say, like psychologists, they live in the clouds and I live in the weeds type thing, but to give very, very clear and concrete recommendations for you guys heading into this challenging season. And also, all the recommendations I'm giving you, this does not come from me, this comes from research. So I'm not just making stuff up by any means. But real quickly, so here's kind of the quick agenda. Is I'll just give another quick intro of myself. Tiffany covered most of it, but we're going to talk about self-care in the brain. So my background is neuropsych, and what self-care looks like from a neuropsych perspective. We're going to talk about executive function. It's a buzzword in education right now, but we're going to go through that really quickly and kind of what that looks like and how that relates to self-care. Then we're going to talk about what to do before finals. Now, some people have finals next week, so this will be a little bit crunched, but it's great information to have for the future about what we can start to build in to help our kids be successful in finals and really take the pressure off of us, again, with the self-care piece. And then what to do over break. I'm assuming a lot of the parents here have neurodiverse children. We know that our kids regress twice as much over break than the quote unquote typical child. So what habits and routines can we implement where we come back stronger after break, but also we don't want to regress? And then I'll give as much time for question and answer as possible, since I have a very short attention span. I'm sure a lot of people do as well, so I try not to talk too much. But just a real quick background on me. Like Tiffany said, I was raised in Boulder County, and I was diagnosed with ADHD at a young age. I was one of those people who was very, very high on the hyperactive scale, and I self-medicated through exercise. So movement's always been a very big component of my life. Lots of academic struggles growing up, but the way I combated that is, you know, I had the athletics. I had something to kind of get me through school. But after I left high school, I hit a wall. I went to college on a football scholarship and failed out very quickly. I didn't understand how to balance the academic, the athletic, and the social aspects of my life. And I really had to do this executive function work and implement a lot of these habits and routines and put in the hard work to turn my ADHD from a hindrance to a gift. ADHD is a huge gift in my life right now. The fact that my brain works different is an unbelievable asset. But I had to learn how to discipline that gift, and it ate me up for a very, very long time. So after I was able and had some great mentors in my life and able to get through college, I taught special education in Boulder Valley School District for 10 years. And then I thought I started just a fun little side project on the side. I thought I would throw the football with a few hyperactive kids while we, studied note cards and learned Spanish. And then 3 years later, we have Untapped Learning, which has about 250 students we do intensive executive function mentoring with in Boulder County, work with colleges all across the country. I collaborate with athletic departments on these executive function challenges. And we also just opened a center in Centennial. So that's kind of my real quick background. Let's talk about self-care in the brain. So real quickly, before we get into this, executive function is a very big deal for self-care. And what executive function is, essentially it lives in the frontal lobe of our brain. And it's the complex set of cognitive processes that all work together so you can reach your goal. That may be a big picture goal, like our kids may want to make the soccer team, or they may want to get an A on a presentation. But it can also be a small goal, like getting out the door on time in the morning, or completing a single basic task or paying attention. So executive function is everything that works together to complete that goal and to help you achieve your goals. Now, here's where the self-care component comes in, is that we know people with strong executive function skills have much lower stress. It allows us for more activities that we enjoy, and it's going to help us recharge. The holidays can be stressful, which we'll talk about in a second, but the goal is to recharge as much as possible. In order to do that, we have to discipline our executive function skills on the front end of break so we can open up the freedom on the back end of break. So here's holiday stress. Now, I'm pulling these stats from the American Psychological Association and from a research that Harvard did. So it is the most wonderful time of year. We all get to spend time with our families, and we have less structure. However, due to that, 77% of people said that the holidays were the most stressful time of the year for them. And they actually came out of the holidays much more stressed, anxious, and worn down than they went going into the holidays. That's a really challenging way to start the new year, especially because a lot of people forget. It depends on the school district, but nearly every school district has a longer spring semester than they do a fall semester. So it's absolutely essential that we recharge over break so we don't burn out around April. This is a different study, but 80% of people reported that the holidays were the most stressful time of year. So we see this kind of over and over. Now, what researchers think that a piece of stress that makes this the most challenging time of year is that our prefrontal cortex, again, this is where our executive function lives. Our prefrontal cortex kind of goes into overload. We have so many things that we're responsible for, and that's outside of our routine over break. And all these different things coming at us from all these different ways causes a significant amount of stress. So we have to find ways to put in routines to help calm down this prefrontal cortex and help us feel much more in control. That will lower the anxiety. So here's why it's the most demanding time of the year. For some reason, middle schools, high schools, colleges determined to have final exams right before holiday break. So we have final exams, and it's common knowledge that winter final exams are generally much more intensive than spring final exams. Springtime, we have a lot more projects and group work and things like that. Final exams in the winter, I'm overgeneralizing right now, but they are typically much more challenging. So we have final exams, which we have to help our students with and help them cross the finish line. Then we have to organize family events, whether that's meal prep, whether that's presents, whether that's holidays, whatever that is. We have to organize all these different things. And we know our organization, that lives in our executive function skills. So it's an incredibly demanding time of the year for us. So when people talk about executive function skills, we always say that they kind of want to go to the top of the pyramid. So they always want to figure out what organizational strategy or what app or what kind of trick and tactic works best for this executive function stuff. When we look at executive function skills, study after study shows us that the most important things we can do is get an adequate amount of sleep. Again, this is the time of year where a lot of kids are up late studying or we're stressed about something. So getting an adequate amount of sleep is kind of the lead domino here that will help so many other things in our brain. So getting enough sleep, taking real time for yourself to get exercise. That could be going to the gym, that could be going to yoga, or it could be simple as walking around the block several times. But studies show us that in the ADHD brain, I know I talk a lot about ADHD because that's my specialty, but this includes dyslexia, anxiety, depression, or basically anybody else. But exercise, getting 15 minutes of intense exercise per day is performing as well or better in some clinical trials than Adderall right now. So for our attention, focus, and memory, exercise is absolutely essential. So please take time for yourself to get some exercise. Hydration, again, the brain needs enough adequate amount of hydration, water, and enough things to work correctly. So sleep, exercise, hydration, then quiet time. A lot of people will talk about the benefits of meditation, and I'm not here to push that or anything like that, but whether it's meditation or just simply sitting to yourself, having a cup of coffee for 15 minutes in the morning, that quiet time by yourself with no screens has a huge effect in the research on executive function skills. So please take the time, if you really want to improve your executive function skills over this demanding time, for sleep, exercise, hydration, and quiet time. Live at the bottom of the pyramid, take care of the basics first, and a lot of the other things will start to take care of themselves. Again, we can only do our best with our students. I know with a lot of teenagers, and being an adult, they don't love what I say all the time, but as much as we can help them with these basic things, we're going to see a huge improvement on attention, learning, memory, focus, no matter what their challenge is or if they have no challenges at all. So please remember to start with the basics. So when we're looking at executive function skills, as adults, here's what we can help our kids with, or our teenagers with, or our college students with before final exams. And I know this may seem kind of quick, so feel free to reference it later on, or do what you can right now, but we don't want to implement too much. We want to start basic. So before our students go into final exams, I know at Untapped Learning, we always work through the mentality discipline equals freedom. So this is a Navy SEAL saying. So the Navy SEAL is ingrained in all of their people, discipline equals freedom. Now this is so true, but if you are neurodiverse or you have a neurodiverse brain, it could not be more true. I know I have to be unbelievably routine-based, and this seems like it would make my life boring, but these disciplines actually open up a ton of freedom in my life. I have much less anxiety, I have much more attention and everything else. And I'll give specific examples of what I mean by discipline equals freedom, but from our experience, this is something that our kids respond to. We judge time differently. And so we get very defensive over our time. This is called time distortion in the research. And so we get very defensive over our time and always looking for extra time and extra freedom. The only way to do that is through discipline. So that's kind of the overarching mentality we want to develop in our kids before final exams. So hopefully Sunday night before finals week, whether that's next week or the week after for you, please take the time to sit down at the kitchen table or whatever that is and completely map out the week with your kids. Making a plan, it seems so basic, but if you actually take the time with your student to write it down, there is so much research about how beneficial this is due to the conversations that come with it. Conversations like, hey, if you have a basketball game on Wednesday and you have a presentation on Thursday, how are we going to get there? I can't tell you how many college students we see, and I know I did not have this in college, that have not developed this skill yet. So the first strategy going into finals is take the time to really make a detailed plan and write it down, whether that's paper or electronically. What this will do with your students, whether they struggle or not, or it will help them anticipate deadlines. We'll know what's coming up and we'll know how to get there. If you struggle with attention like me, a lot of people do not understand that attention is a depleting resource throughout the week, especially during final exams. Our attention is maxed out, and by the end of the week, get tired. So we want to front load big tasks as much as possible. So if there is a big part of a speech or a presentation we have to work on, which we can work ahead, we want to make sure to do that and front load that towards the beginning of the week. We also want to have our kids complete smaller tasks throughout the week. The easy example for this is just math homeworks that are consistently given. We want to set up accountability checkpoints. So again, the typical ADHD child gets 20,000 more negative reinforcements than positive reinforcements by the age of 10. We can look at this through all kinds of neurodiversities, but almost every kid will respond better to positives than they will to negatives. We still need accountability. We still need that negative, but it should be very clear up front where the accountability checkpoints are. If we make it to Tuesday and everything's done, what kind of positive thing happens? What kind of dopamine hit do we get? If we don't make it to Tuesday, what consequence happens? Where am I held accountable? So very clear accountability checkpoints. And then we want to have this plan accessible, whether it's electronically or posting in the refrigerator, on the kitchen counter, or whatever. We want to make sure we're constantly coming back to it. So please, please, please take the time to make a plan with your students heading into finals. Also note any grades that are kind of on the border that we really want to focus on. So please don't let this give you anxiety or stress you out. But this is an example of a high-level student that we work with. So you can see their plan on the right-hand side, and there is a ton to do this week. There's soccer, there's a bunch of homeworks. We broke down all the large assignments into daily checkpoints and manageable pieces. Once we do that for this child, because this child does experience high levels of anxiety, we give it to them one day at a time. So no matter how busy we are, we can get things into 4 to 6 tasks per day. Again, this is like an AP level student. If you have a younger student, this is obviously less. But take the time to plan everything out and then give it to them in bite-sized chunks if it's something that they get stressed out with. Focus on one day at a time, lots of love, lots of accountability. 2 pats on the back, 1 kick in the tail. So the first thing we want to do with our kids is we want to plan. The next is I really want to talk about the impact of routines. So when you go into a stressful time of year like the holidays, routines are so incredibly helpful. So routines make everything predictable. Again, they reduce stress and anxiety. This is this discipline equals freedom thing. Research shows that students that have routine actually have better focus, attention, and organization. It improves their executive function skills just through having a routine. It helps us become more efficient, which is going to be very important during finals week. And over time, it builds confidence and discipline. Again, we do everything through the lens of school, but it's not really about school. So where we start with the routine is wherever there's a fire in your life, we want to implement one routine to start to put that out. Like I said, I have severe ADHD. And one of the things I've always struggled with is getting out the door on time. My attention is very poor in the morning. It takes me a little bit to get up and going. So a routine that I've had to build into my life is I have to have a routine. So you can see on the left side of your screen that I have my wallet, my keys, and my phone all in a bowl. I call this my landing pad. When I get home, everything lands there. In the morning, it's my launching pad. It's all I need. I can go through, swipe it up, and I'm launched for the day. My clothes are laid out, my backpack's next to the door, everything is ready to go the next morning. If I don't get out the door on time, it's because I messed up the night before. If you want a guaranteed way, which you will not do well on your final exams, which I have done many times before, it's have an anxious morning before school. We want to get out the door in a very calm and organized way, and the only way to do that is to have a nighttime routine beforehand. Let's decrease that anxiety on our kids and, more importantly, on ourselves as parents going into finals week. So that's an example of a routine. Feel free to build that into anywhere where you feel like we're having a challenge, but start slow. So here are possible routines to build in before finals. Morning routine or a nighttime routine. Nighttime routine would be around sleep. It's probably the most contentious thing right now between teenagers and parents. Everyone is fighting about sleep, but we know how important that it is, especially going into a demanding time. We can look at academic routines, which I will talk about in a second. I cannot tell you how passionate I am about office hours. If your student if you have a neurodiverse high school college student, which I'll talk about real briefly, and then some kind of movement routine. Again, that can be intense movement. It could be walking around the block, but kids need some type of movement every single day during final exams to increase memory and decrease stress and anxiety. So these are possible routines. Again, when we implement everything at once, nothing works. So start with one thing, build it slow, and lots of praise. So those are possible routines going into finals. Real quickly, office hours. Office hours is the ultimate discipline equals freedom thing. I know 30 minutes of office hours when I work with high school and college students, 30 minutes of them going to office hours for a structured study session will save them an hour and a half to 2 hours on their own. And the reason is we don't have to worry about task initiation. The teacher is leading them through a study session, and they don't have to worry about maintaining attention. Everything is structured. More importantly, for people here, it really takes the pressure off the parents. You are not the one policing them, telling them to get back to work to study. Really takes the pressure off you. So office hours whenever possible. It has that structure. Then finally, as a teacher, I've taught for many years. My wife's a teacher. All my friends are teachers, spending a lot of time in teachers' lounges. If a teacher knows that you care, grade is on the border. If they really understand that you care, so many times we give you the benefit of the doubt. A great way to show your teacher that you care is to go to something that's not mandatory, office hours. So I can't tell you how passionate I'm about office hours for our older students. So finding some way to really give our kids a lot of praise or some kind of positive reward if they are able to attend that, if that's relevant at your school. The next thing we want to do, and this is a lot of times for the parents who have a student who has a 504 or an IEP, a lot of times we have accommodations on testing and going into final exams. We're always telling our students, like, you have extra time, talk to your teacher, talk to your professor, talk to whoever. And then we're floored when they don't do it, when they don't actually advocate for themselves. From my experience, many of our kids don't advocate for themselves because they don't know how. So what we can do as parents is encourage them to advocate, but also give them a script, role play with it. Teach them how to walk up to their professor or their teacher with their shoulders back, their head high, not interrupting and asking for extra time in a respectful way. Or checking out with their teacher at the very end of the class to make sure that they did everything. So we want to make sure we help them learn how to advocate. A piece that's been huge over the past 2 years is so many of our kids don't know how to advocate through email. They send emails that are just an absolute mess. So we want to help give them scripts and help them do this. Again, this is a life skill. We do it through the lens of school, but this is really about life. So helping your kid advocate and teaching them how to advocate is a great thing to do going into final exams. And then finally, teaching our kids how to study. That's kind of the number one complaint I hear is my kids don't know how to study. With the neurodiverse brain, this is best practice for all kids, but especially with the neurodiverse brain, you want to have short, frequent study sessions. My attention is not very long, but the research also shows that studying 10 minutes per night is much better than studying for an hour the night before. That may be common sense here, but what we don't generally think about is things like test anxiety and other aspects where we just haven't gotten this material from short-term to long-term memory yet. The way to get things from short-term to long-term memory, short, frequent study sessions. Build this into your plan. You can see from the picture, this is just a kid in our center. He is throwing the football, and while he's doing his studying cards, studying looks different for everybody. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of thing. The goal is just to learn the material. So we want to teach our kids active studying, how to interact with the material. An example is malevolent. You could teach them to break the word down. Mal equals bad, or it looks like it has violent at the end. A lot of these things that are common sense to most people, like reading the questions before you read the passage, that's not common sense for our students. So teaching them how to study and take tests and breaking it down, even if it seems like common sense to you, so many of our kids are so bright intellectually, but they just don't have these basic skills. So anytime we can relate that to them, it's very, very important, especially for students who struggle with executive function challenges. And then learning to your strengths. So I know I went through that kind of quickly, and we'll send some materials out to help. But those, picking one or two of those, whether it be routines, planning, teaching your kid how to advocate, those are what we would recommend going into finals. Remember, don't try to take everything on at once. Keep it simple. Pick the one that you feel like is, would be the most beneficial to your student. Let's see if we can take some of the pressure and anxiety off everybody, students and parents. So after we get through finals, and there's kind of like a huge load off, here are things to consider about what to do over break. And again, these are research-based. We know that our students the students who are neurodiverse, we know that they do regress twice as much. However, we know that they need a break because it is so demanding for them. I know having ADHD, it's twice as hard for me to pay attention than a typical person. So we also need this downtime. So it's a delicate balance that we have to have here. So this is for the parents. So to take pressure off you guys, we want to practice what we preach. And so not only are you helping your kids plan, but I would highly, highly recommend that you create a plan for yourself. One of the best strategies for adults that we do is brain dumping everything that you have to do, getting it all out on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper, and then working it into a plan. So we have a lot of stuff floating around in our heads, again, in our prefrontal cortex. What meals we have to pick up, what groceries, when we have to get a haircut, when we have to do things for work, when we have to get gifts. Getting all that out of your head and into a clear schedule and on a sheet of paper is essential for our self-care. Get it out of your head. Someone much brighter than me said, your brain is for having thoughts, not holding thoughts. So we want to get everything out, and that will really, really calm down the anxiety. The other thing that I strongly want to encourage when possible, again, a humble piece of advice, is once your list is done for the day, completely be done with the day. The next day, every day is busy. So you may have a lot to do the next day, and it doesn't do us any good to stress about that. Once your task list and your meetings are done for the day, you're done. Turn it off. We'll worry about tomorrow. So take the time to plan out your week. Work, kids' activity, errands, appointments, anything you need, just brain dump it out and start working it into a list for yourself. The other thing we want to look at is routines to establish over break. And this could be for you, or this could be as a family. We don't want to overdo it, but we do want some kind of academic routine for our kids. The families that I've seen that really do a good job with it is like they have a time every single day. Let's say 7 to 7:30 every single night, everyone reads. It's just what this family does. But we want some kind of academic routine. That looks different for every family, but we want to keep that brain moving in some capacity. Very, very important. The next is, as a family, we want some kind of movement routine. So some people go to the YMCA at 10 o'clock in the morning. Some people just jump on the trampoline out back. But some kind of movement for every single person in the family will really, really take the pressure off. If you're ever curious about research around exercise and the brain, there is just mounds and mounds of it. I'm happy to help direct you in the right direction for that. But having some kind of daily movement routine over break would be awesome. Having some type of quiet routine, especially for the parents here, is absolutely essential. With all the demands that are on you right now, we need to give you guys a chance to relax. So having some kind of quiet time every single day, and please put that into your schedules when you're planning. Try to keep it at the same time every single day if possible, but really take care of yourselves. Give yourself that quiet downtime. And then sleep. This is a great time of year to catch up on sleep. Having a sleep routine. As someone who works with college students, it's very common that, especially if they're out of state, they come home and they want to see their friends, and they're out till 2 or 3 o'clock every single morning. And then we try to go back to school for that 9 a.m. on the first day, and it's just an absolute mess. So a great way to think about it is what's called the sleep variance. If you have to get up at 7 a.m. every single day for school, You don't want your variance to be more than 2 hours later. Again, that's really hard for our teenagers, but somewhere within that 2 hours is a great kind of like rule of thumb for sleep. Okay, so those are routines established. Again, you can't attack it all. Pick one or two that seem most important in your family and in your life. And then kind of the last thing that I wanted to touch on is all of the research that's coming out right now can be boiled down, the executive function world can be boiled down into this. Stress plus rest equals growth. So if anybody works out here, they know that how important it is to work your tail off, but then to give your body rest time or your muscles will never grow. Think about your brain in the same capacity. We want our kids to work as hard as they can, but they're never going to really grow unless they do get that rest. So when we see families overdo it, when the kids have 4 to 6 hours of academic time over break, we have to make sure to give that brain rest as well, or it won't its capacity. So stress plus rest equals growth is a great way to think about the brain that struggles with executive function skills. So that is kind of what I have, and I went through a lot of that quickly. So I'd love to answer as many questions as possible if anybody has them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brandon. I appreciate that. That's a lot. That's great. So at the bottom of the screen, you guys will see Q&A. Please start putting in your questions that you have for Brandon while you're thinking through that and all the amazing information that he just gave you. I do want to remind you, and I know you guys have probably seen the advertisements, but this is the first of 3 webinars we're having. And so the second one, I'm so excited about this one as well with Gina Mead. She's a health prevention and social emotional learning specialist in Lead. She's a DCSD. And that next webinar is on January 5th. So get through the holidays, have all of that. And we're going to be focusing on the physical, mental, and emotional components of self-care and creating, again, another concrete plan. And I know, again, as a parent of a neurodiverse child, it can seem overwhelming, but I love what Brandon did in emphasizing 15 minutes. I even started with 5. It's like starting somewhere, because I think sometimes we can get so overwhelmed in what we're doing that we're thinking, I can't set aside all of this time, but even just starting small and a couple minutes of meditation even helped me through that. So as we start with the questions, and so you guys use that the Q&A, not the chat one, but the Q&A one, so we can go through that. So make sure to be able to ask the expert with Brandon of what you guys are thinking about and how he can assist in any questions you have. But Brandon, as we're waiting, as a child that grew up with ADHD, what's one thing that you wish your parents or teachers would have known, or what would you have liked them to have understood about you as a child?
Wow, that is a hard. There's a lot of answers there. I guess the one that comes to mind right away is I touched on it a little bit, but so I acquire information very differently. Like I would never dare to sit down and read a book. Like that would be ridiculous. My attention is too poor. I would never even try to attempt that. But I was able to get through grad schools and have multiple degrees and work with all these kids because I'm able to acquire information pacing nonstop and through Audible. So, but if I were to try to do that, like growing up, like pace in the back of the classroom while the teacher was talking, or throw the tennis ball off the wall while I was learning math facts, I know they wouldn't have been okay with that. So just understanding that I acquired information in a different way would have been very, very helpful for my education.
I love that you say that. I know when my son struggled, his first experience in school is because he wasn't going to sit down. And I know that was tough for the teacher because she wanted him to sit down and listen and face him. And I'm like, he's never going to do that. But what I would ask is allow him, if it's not disruptive, to walk in the back, but then challenge him. As you're teaching the class, ask him a question. And I can guarantee you he will be able to answer it. So we tested that out, and she was impressed because we go through the old adage of you have to look at me and you have to be sitting down, you have to be facing me, but not everyone can do that. And if anything, if he is looking at you, I feel that he's almost not listening then. But if he's fidgeting or walking and stuff, he's capturing everything you're saying.
Yeah, it's a skill we have to learn, because you still need that skill, right? Like I can't like walk into a job interview and just be pacing. Like I've had to acquire that skill, but at the same time, like that's just how I acquire information. So just knowing that there's no right or wrong way here to get the information. And that's why sometimes we do have to coach our kids, like I said, to like walk to their teachers with their shoulder back and their head high, and just really really teaching them these skills that may not come intuitive to them like they do to others.
Yeah. We do have a question. Do you have any other ideas for increasing movement as a family?
Yes. So the easy answer is walks. And there's a reason why I give that in multiple ways. So one, first of all, there's all kinds of brain scans of people that walk 15 minutes per day, like around the block, versus people who don't. You can see just the blood flow flowing to the frontal lobe of the brain. So that's kind of the easy one. But the other one, which I would do, which I would never, like if I was going to have a hard conversation with an adolescent or a teenager, I would never have it face to face. I would always do it walking and talking. It's amazing how much less intimidating it is when we walk and talk with kids, and how much more information we get from them. So I would recommend that from two ways, for the exercise, but also for the relationship. For any of those nerds out there like me, the reason for this is that when a kid stares at you eye to eye, especially young men, the amygdala fires, and when the amygdala, the fight or flight, is firing, a lot of information doesn't come in or doesn't come out. So that's why walking and talking, or like windshield time and driving, that's why we can get so much more information from kids.
Wonderful. There's another question on, strategies for keeping a teen on a brain dump tool, such as a planner. It's a great question. So how do you keep them wanting to use it, I guess?
Wanting to what? I'm sorry?
Use a planner. So strategy.
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, we have to figure out what works best for kids, and in their school and in their setting and in their family lives. Like for me, like I do everything electronically. I build in reminders and Google Calendar and things like that. But if a planner is the best fit for your kid, it's going to take a lot of praise and a lot of positive reinforcement for that to keep going. That's that routines piece. Until it just becomes a habit, tons and tons of praise. By the way, that's why these kids are exhausting. But tons of praise and tons of accountability there. That's kind of how we implement every single routine. And that can look different for everyone's life. Like a positive reinforcement could be 15 minutes extra of video games if you get to this many days in a row, or it could be more time with friends, or it could be whatever motivates them. But we know our kids respond really well to positive reinforcement. So that's what I'd recommend there.
Love that. And any ideas, another question, any ideas to support motivation?
Yes. I will try to keep this answer for under 20 minutes. So first of all, if you are neurodiverse, meaning ADHD, anxiety, something in that realm, our brain has lower than typical amounts of dopamine. What that looks like in the real world is we struggle not only with attention, but maintaining on task and what would appear to be motivation. So the cards are kind of stacked against us in that sense. However, we do have the gift of hyperfocus. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. But what we're really after here is not motivation. We're really after discipline. So we're really after, if it's cold outside, I don't feel like exercising. Or if it's kind of dark, I don't feel like studying, things like that. But the people who have it really figured out long-term is the people who are disciplined versus motivation. So I would have a routine. Same time, same place, wherever possible, and tons of positive reinforcements. I know I'm kind of repeating myself, and really we're after discipline here and really not motivation. Motivation comes and goes. We want to make sure that our kids are disciplined and consistent.
I love that, because I think sometimes, as a parent, it's when things are going smoothly or they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, we're just keep moving forward and on our day. But it's when that negative thing comes in where often the reactions come in. So I think, it is hard, but we got to remember we have to be intentional when those positive things. Great job doing your homework. Great job, following the planner, versus automatically having that knee-jerk reaction when it doesn't follow that, and we're like, oh no, you got to stay on task. So how do you what can we do to remind ourselves that positive reinforcement when it's just happening kind of naturally and you're not thinking about that because it's.
Yeah. Well, and real quickly, taking a step back, one of the things that really helps with that discipline piece is office hours. Again, the more structure we have, the easier it is. And again, I'm not sure if that's in your life. We want to take the pressure off you, coming back to self-care as much as possible. We want to take the pressure off you, but have that structure. And so over time, we will see those skills build. Tiffany, can you ask your question again? I'm sorry. About the positive reinforcement?
Yeah, what I found is, because you gave a great statistic that said, especially neurodiverse kids, they hear it. What was the percent? They hear so much more negative.
So the estimation, and this comes from Attitude Magazine. I forget where they got it from, but it was a very credible study. They estimate 20,000 more negative reinforcements than positive reinforcements by the age of 10. And what this happens, there's a reason there's an 80% correlation between ADHD and anxiety. We're always running behind, someone's always hollering at us. And then we see the anxiety and other things start to kind of pop up. But the first thing I would tell parents is have a ton of empathy with yourself around this, because I give talks, I work with tons of kids, tons of families, tons of kids all across the country. And I feel like I have a good day when I say one positive thing to every 2 negative things, because these kids can be really hard sometimes. And sometimes we just got to get stuff done. And so I would say have a ton of empathy with yourself, but we do know they respond better to positive reinforcement. That's just what kid after kid, study after study shows. It's not always possible. You need the consequences and you need the accountability, but just having that mindset is helpful.
Well, and I think that goes back to the last question about motivation too, is they're more motivated when they do receive the positive. It reignites that confidence and that just self kind of worth, because if you're always hearing the negative, it's just like, why even try? Because you're kind of getting beaten down and then you just feel like you're not doing anything right. So I think it goes to that. And it kind of ties in with my question where when things are going smoothly, it's hard for me to consciously stop to say, wow, he did everything on the checklist. Great job. And so I think as parents to have ourselves make sure that when it is smooth and you aren't having that frustration or that, you resort to yelling or that chaos happening, then we need to make sure that we do pause to say great job and comment. So I just wanted to make sure that say that.
Well, and you said something very important there too, the praising the process versus the final outcome. The praising the process is huge. Again, the mindset that, we don't fit into the school system. Like the school system was not made for us. However, we don't make excuses about that. It's, if we can reverse engineer a system we don't fit into and figure it out, well then, that's why they estimate in between 60 and 75% of CEOs have ADHD or entrepreneurs, or the fact that your brain works differently, whatever it is a huge asset in the real world if you discipline your gift. I know it's a huge gift in my life. But how we get there is through these disciplines and through praising the process with the understanding as parents, our kids just don't fit. And that's not a bad thing, but it may feel challenging a lot.
Yes. But as we've heard from you and so many others, out of school, they will thrive, and it's just getting us through the next however many years your kids are, because knowing once they get out the structured box kind of system, they are going to thrive and be the best employee for an employer or self-employed. So it's a good reminder for all of us parents. So I don't see any other questions coming in. I want to thank you guys all. Again, visit Guiding Bright Minds. Join us, become a member. We are constantly putting out new tools, new resources, and I want to hear from you. As I said, I'm on this journey with you. I'd love to partner with you, love to know what you want to learn, what you want to do, and to connect you with amazing providers like Brandon, who are here to help us on our journey. So thank you all. Brandon, anything else that you want to say? And check out the next 2 webinars. Oh, and I do want to remind you, because you did attend and are joining, at the end of our last webinar, which is on January 12th, we do have all those wonderful giveaways. So you will be entered into a drawing to receive one of those giveaways. And I know one is a free month of yoga. We have some books. We have, I know, Yeti's mug, all different kinds of things. So thank you again for your time. Brandon, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if again, so I'm the founder of Untapped Learning, and if we can ever help, we do a ton of executive function work with middle school, high school, and college kids. Please let me know. And even if we're not, even if you just have a question for me, my email is below. So please don't hesitate to reach out. The goal is to help as many people as possible. So please don't hesitate to reach out if I can help.
Wonderful. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Brandon, and have a great evening.
Okay. Thanks, guys, so much. Thanks so much. Okay. Bye.